Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this event, which is organized by the International Coaching Federation Switzerland. And it is really dedicated to international organizations and NGOs, but anyone else who's really interested in how we can improve organizational culture, climate, performance, everything that is related to work life in these very stressful times. I'm Saba Imru-Mathieu. I'm the lead for International Coach Federation, specifically for international organizations and NGOs. And I am delighted to introduce you to some of our panelists and to my colleague, Katie Klein. I'll start with Dr. Bilal Jamoussi, who is Deputy Director at the Standards Bureau of the International Telecommunication Union. He is very passionate and supportive about coaching, and he's proven it in his long career. But especially, he's someone with a very rich international background who will contribute greatly to this conversation. I would like to also introduce Professor George Boak, who teaches leadership at York St. John University and who does a lot of research specifically in coaching, which is, of course, very important. This is a nascent profession. We absolutely do need to have good, robust research that supports the credibility and reliability of our profession. And I'll hand over to Katie now.
Yeah. Hello, so my name is Katie Klein. I'm the HR Director at the International Road Transport Union and have been a qualified coach since 2014. And I'm very excited to be co-facilitating this panel with Saba. Passionate about coaching myself, I'm really pleased to introduce Dr. Frode Hvaring, who's here with us today. He is an international leadership, culture, and talent expert with various regional and global roles as a CEO and a CHRO in employer lobbying, Swiss banking, power industry, and so forth. And he is very passionate about coaching, and he created a coaching-based onboarding program for C-levels who move into new roles. And if you want to find out more about Frode, there is the description of the profiles on our website. So very warm welcome to Frode. And also I would like to welcome Dr. Conrad Hughes. Conrad holds a PhD and an EdD and is currently the Director General of the International School of Geneva. He has a background in education and English literature and has taught in various international schools in Europe and as well as India. He's a certified coach, and Dr. Hughes, Conrad, uses the principle of life coaching in his leadership philosophy and style. Welcome, Conrad. Back to you, Saba.
Well, Katie, thank you very much for that. Now we'll go into the heart of the matter because we have a lot of very, very interesting perspectives. We wanted to have a panel with people that come from industry, so to speak, that are not necessarily coaches, because we have a lot of webinars by coaches. Of course, we've been coaching is great. So you always hear the same story when we're talking. But it was very important for me to bring in the voice of distinguished speakers from different areas of the working environment, from academia to business to international organizations and diplomacy. These are all very valuable voices of people who have actually experienced coaching in one way or another, and who will be able to enrich in our own perspective of what coaching is. And I'm confident that will be the same for our audience. So what I'd like to invite you to do, dear panelists, is to take a minute perhaps to add to our very brief introductions of you, something that you would like the audience to know. And then immediately present what is your understanding as a coaching approach. The title of our panel is A Coaching Approach, a Stabilizing Factor in Times of Uncertainty, with a question mark at the end. So what is your understanding of a coaching approach, and how might it benefit organizations? So this is what I'd like you to do now. I don't know who would like to start. It's very informal. Please go ahead.
Well, happy to jump, Saba.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, for me, I think working in an international organization like the ITU, where you have staff from close to 100 different nations, speaking different languages, coming from different backgrounds, and whenever you work in an environment where resources are constrained and there's some sort of competition for resources or for time, it could create some sort of friction or some discussions among staff and between supervisor and staff, which is normal. I think in any organization would have similar conversations. But having the coaching approach that you have kindly introduced in ITU was quite useful, because it provided that psychological safety in the conversation. It's kind of based on an open-ended questions. It's more conversational, and when people are feeling stressed with either the workload or interpersonal issues, etc., it's important to have that conversation in a safe space. And I think the coaching approach is fantastic in that allows the open-ended. It allows for people to see the broader perspective of what the issue is, maybe even put a relative figure to the coming into the meeting of a coaching session. They could see that as the biggest problem of life, but at the end, if you broaden the scope, you can realize it's not that bad in the grand scheme of things, and that there is life outside of work and outside of the walls of the organization. So I think that conversational aspect of coaching has been quite helpful in resolving some of the interpersonal skills, especially when you have a multi-cultural, multilingual environment, such as in the UN system.
Thank you, Bilal. It's very interesting that you introduced the dimension of multiculturalism and how coaching can be helpful to clarify and improve communication also across nations and across cultures. Thank you for that.
Okay, can I go next?
Yes. Go ahead.
You asked us to say a little bit more about ourselves. I've been working on different aspects of work-based learning for over 30 years, on the interaction, on the borderline between academic approaches to learning and development and very practical approaches to learning and development. And coaching is one of those, obviously, one of those processes which we can use to help people learn in the workplace. For me, coaching is a coaching approach is one that helps an individual. You might be working with a team or group, in fact, but I'll stay with the individual example. An individual to come to a better understanding of a situation and decide what they want to do, and then moving on from there to support them in doing what it is they decide to do. Now, that extra support might simply be in terms of encouragement or feedback, or it might be more substantial. So the situation might be, as Balil's...
Oh, we lost George for a minute, so perhaps we'll let another panelist go. Frode, would you like to go? And then we'll retrieve George later. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice to be here. And I would like to echo what both Bilal and George were saying. So because it's a multicultural panel already. And coaching is a transversal skill. In fact, it's something that works across humanity. So my doctoral degree is on cultural intelligence. So I really like to talk about it, but it's not the theme today. But it's really nice, to perhaps be more concrete. And I thought I would just share in 1 minute what happened to me. So I was one of those stereotype career people, so learning things fast and producing fast and being really in action, totally in action, results impact. And then at a certain point, I found there was something I needed more, and I had the pleasure of going through a coaching certification in 2010, and it had a few effects on me. So I'm a late bloomer, let's say. So the effect was that, in fact, I went from this business orientation to the human orientation. I was in HR already, but it was not a business side, that I saw. And suddenly I had another color panel in front of me. I learned patience. I learned that all rivers don't fall into the sea, things like this. Sarah was part of it, by the way. You were one of my teachers. and also for my teams, for me, for my future. So these things are the things I would like to transfer to others. So from that moment, I started showing others how this was possible and making action become also energy towards not immediate action, towards not immediate results, but more towards quality, in fact, and sustainability, and finding perhaps their inner motivation. So I think the fact that you don't have the capability of listening, especially when you go higher up in management positions, and you don't have the capability of asking the right questions at the right time, that you don't have the humility of sort of waiting for others to come with ideas, is something that is a problem. And we can see that in the world today with all the democratures that we have. So people don't get it, and they don't admit other ways of functioning. And when you're a coach, you are automatically inclined to discover and not to judge. And I think that's something we should not underestimate when it comes to, you talked about safety in the workplace and psychological safety. If you have that capability, there is a ratchet effect. You cannot go back because you have learned that, in fact, it is a positive thing in life, and you don't want to go to the other side again. So that was just a sort of appetizer from my side.
Thank you. Thank you, Frode. I think it's interesting for the audience to realize that many people think that coaching means hiring an expensive external coach. And as you see, what we're talking about here is really bringing the coaching mindset, the solution focus, the creating psychological safety, that connection between humans and so on, as a talent for everyone in the organization, not only the leaders, but everyone else, to bring that mentality. So thank you for that. And we have George again.
I'm so sorry. Something happened at this end.
There's always a technical glitch, don't worry. Would you like to pick off where you left off?
You're very kind, thank you. I was just going to say that you can contrast the coaching approach, in my opinion, with a directive approach, which tells people what to do, or a persuasive selling approach, or a laissez-faire approach, which says, oh, we've got a dreadful problem there. What are you going to do about it? But is not particularly helpful. So for me, a coaching approach engages the person who's facing the situation, and then helps them find forward.
Thank you. That's the essential part, the essential heart of the difference between a coaching approach and a directive approach. Thanks very much for that, George. And Conrad, now, what would you like to say about, your understanding of a coaching approach and eventually the benefits of it?
Yeah, to me, coaching, it's an inner transformation that changes you fundamentally, because you begin to understand the power that you have within you, the resources that are within. And it starts with vision, being able to ideate, conceptualize the future, and to have that future fit vision that you can project yourself into. To get there, you draw from within the energy and many of the answers to the questions that you have that are hidden in the recesses of your unconscious. And it's where the coach and the coachee are interacting through these powerful questions and this deep listening, that those questions are answered. ultimately, it's something that makes you a stronger person, a more creative person. And it's an extraordinarily powerful way of looking at human potential, educationally and in the workplace. We just need to harness the power of our creativity, of our minds, and trust ourselves more, because we have the answers to the questions.
That's great. I've just been listening to all four of you with hairs coming up on my arms, because it's really exciting. And I've noticed an interesting pattern with Bilal was starting when he was talking about the conversations that were in a safe place where there was exchange, and you could see the broader perspective and the benefit for an organization, which is compelling. And then when George was speaking, he was talking more about the individual and the individual being able to understand a situation and then understand the actions that they would need to take. The person would be more engaged and move forward. So we went from an organizational discussion to an individual point of view. Then Frode started talking more about the skills around coaching, stopping from being always action, 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 action with no space, to creating space and energy, and words like humility were coming out, asking questions and openness. And then Conrad talking about this inner transformation and the resources that we have within ourselves, this importance of vision and looking ahead, dancing in the moment and harnessing creativity. And all these perspectives really complement each other. And I hope that everyone who's listening can already see how a coaching mindset is actually a talent for everyone. So very, very exciting at this stage. And I think perhaps now we could maybe move a little bit deeper into the next question, which was linked to the title of our webinar today, Coaching Approach, a Stabilizing Force in Uncertain Times. And perhaps I might address my question to Bilal. Bilal, in what ways could coaching bring a sense of stability, do you think, in the uncertain times we live with now?
I think the fact that we are in an unstable time, especially with the financial constraints, with the UN 80 review that's underway, with some organizations moving sites, these are real problems that touch people's lives and livelihood. And so it's important to have an open and transparent conversation, and the coaching approach elements allow for that conversation to take place with the co-creation of the solution, because we may not identify as leaders or managers the best solution for individuals or groups by ourselves. It's important to have a consultative approach to it. And I think following the coaching approach might unlock possibilities that are initially not clear or not obvious. And when staff in organizations find this approach to be taken, I think they would be more inclined to participate and find solutions and be engaged. And so I think this is a real, an important time for managers to be equipped with these techniques, and for managers who have used this technique to practice it. And I really like how Conrad started by saying you have to start with your own self as an individual to go deep and practice the coaching approach with yourself, because that's usually the first element of psychologically safe discussion. Understanding yourself, controlling yourself, understanding the other, and then managing the relationship. So that's, I think, to Conrad's point, that's a really good way to start this approach.
Thank you so much, Bilal. So I'm hearing again, with the uncertain times, the fact that we have this open and transparent conversation, that managers who know how to use the skills should practice them even more now, and that other managers, it's an opportunity to start being interested in the coaching approach. I was wondering if anyone else in the panel had another sort of point of view to bring to this question about how coaching And what is the coaching approach that you would imagine that needs to be used for people who don't understand the word coaching approach?
I might bring a perspective, digital and AI. How many people don't exactly understand what AI is, So it may be similar to this lack of a compass, how to read this new script, how to find out how to use this incredible tool, which coaching is, but also AI is an incredible tool. So there is no compass visible for AI, right? We don't know exactly how to interpret this, and therefore what I have found out, I've been working a lot on digital and AI, and I think the capability of navigating depends on our inner balance, also in both in digital AI and in coaching, because it's this conviction of being able to harness unpredictability. Oh, that's a long word. So we don't know exactly what we will find inside of ourselves, and we don't know exactly what we'll find in AI or how we will use it, but that's another discussion. So it's about this self-consciousness. We talked about humility. I think it's very important to be intellectually humble also, so that we don't know everything, but at least we can find out. And that's the approach, this curiosity, this willingness to discover ourselves and others. And also, I work a lot with leaders, and one of our transversal items is in fact self-consciousness. If you're not conscious about yourself, how can you lead others consciously? And this is rather important. And coaching is one of the best ways, I would guess, to find out more about yourself. And in addition to that, you learn also better how to find out about others. What do you want more? So I think there is something there about this inner balance to be found. That is an argument in favor of coaching when everything moves so fast around us. So this goes, I don't want to go back to ancient Chinese philosophy, but indeed, there is something about Ikigai, if you want to go to Japan or the inner self, that has an opportunity to this. So it's about, I guess, creating your own script and finding out what tools you have for doing that. And if you can do that in rather harmoniously with some perhaps experts helping you in terms of getting the right questions there, I think also the answers will be pertinent and probably resisting over time to different changes that come from the outside that might not be that important as they look like when they arrive.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Thank you, Frode. The importance of self-consciousness and self-awareness and starting with yourself. Saba, you got the...
If I can just jump in, Bev, I think that in uncertain times, there are two things that are going on, at least two things that are going on. One is that we need to believe or feel that we're being listened to.
Mm-hmm.
And coaching can really do that, particularly when it is provided in a place, as Bilal said, where we feel psychologically safe. And secondly, we can have all sorts of worries running around our heads in uncertain times. And through a coaching conversation, we can start to express some of those things that we've got, the worries that we've got. And they can often become less potent if we try to put them into words, talking to another person, than if we just let them run around inside our heads. Maybe that relates to what Frode has been saying about finding our own script. Because you sometimes have a coachee saying, "Oh, I think this," and then they think, "Do I really think that? Is that really what I think?"
Thank you, George. That is very interesting. The importance of being listened to, but also the importance of being able to express yourself out loud to someone else, so that you don't have it all in your mind, and suddenly realize that while you're expressing yourself, that actually things are maybe not quite as bad as you thought when you kept everything within. Yeah. Very, very good point. Interesting point. Saba, did you want to ask the next question?
I'd like to check with Conrad and Bilal if there's anything else you would like to add on this, the notion of coaching bringing stability or a coaching approach. And if not, I'll move ahead.
Sure, I can come in. I like what I'm hearing. I think our instinctive response to uncertainty is to go into crash states. You contract. You also go into analysis paralysis. And in fact, you need to loosen up your thinking, be much more creative. So there are all sorts of great coaching techniques that we use in our leadership team. The mentors table, where each person ideates questions they'd ask to someone who's important in their lives, some kind of role model, and just listens to the answer that they get. Or the Walt Disney notion of the critic, the planner going up to the visionary. And so what's the vision? Let's take this uncertainty and pitch our vision over it, where we want to go. Then how are we going to plan that out? And then let's get into that critic position and critique the planning, so that we're already doing our risk mitigation in a much more creative, collaborative, and, as my colleagues were saying, psychologically safe way. The corporate approach to risk mitigation is very logical, and I think you're not releasing human potential enough, because that needs to come from that safe space and those exercises that are already harnessing creative thinking, creative ideation.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Conrad. So what I hear from you, and it's just really fantastic, and I hope it's coming across to our audience, is that coaching is a personal mindset and behavior. It's not a set of regulations, staff rules or things. It's really for each individual to adopt this self-awareness, the ability to have vision that have been cited in the conversation by the panelists, the ability to create space for people to talk, to hear people, and also to ask questions that will help improve the quality of thought and creativity. So when we're talking about coaching, for those of you who are not coaches here and who don't know what it is, well, this is actually what it is. It's the behavior and mindset of each individual that can create, as the panelists said, a little bit more stability in these uncertain times. Before asking the next question, I'd like to just mention a couple of comments that were in the chat. Dr. Judy Gannon, who said that's an interesting thing about developing as a coach, understanding how you work and the impact you have on others. Sharad Agarwal says the coaching mindset is such an interesting concept, makes it so accessible to all. Yes, it's accessible to all. I'm a great fan about that. It is accessible to all. And Albino says it goes from myself to the team to the organization. So it all starts with the individual. And if that's all right with you, then I'll ask this next question, which is, what are the challenges to adopting a coaching approach?
Okay, three things from me, because I can remember three things, so I tend to say three things. One is it takes a certain amount of skill on the part of the coach, so that's a challenge, and one of the things that coaches need to do is to resist the temptation to provide answers and solutions, because we don't actually know what the answer or solution is in most cases for the issue that the person's brought to us. But that letting go is sometimes not natural to some people. Secondly, on the part of the individual who's being coached, they might want us to tell them what to do. So they might be kind of, what is this? Especially if you start adopting a coaching approach as a line manager with your staff, they're going, what's going on here? So it can take a little bit of time, in my experience, with some people to get them to accept this position of coaching. And the third thing is that it takes a bit of time. Again, if you're acting as a coach, as a line manager, you might think it's a whole lot quicker to tell people. Well, it might be in the short term, but in the longer term, as they develop their skills, it takes less time if you adopt a coaching approach, in my experience, than if you adopt a more directive approach. So those are my three challenges.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. These are really the challenges for individuals who are learning to use coaching techniques in their communication, in the way they communicate. Thanks for that, George. Who else would like to jump in?
Maybe I can back on that. Yeah, I really agree with what George was saying. In a business environment, there's a supervisee relationship. There's a relationship of evaluation. And if you're trying to get into coach stakes, it's that much more difficult, because the natural pattern of coaching where someone wants to be coached and approaches you and opens up and there's a coaching contract, you can't really use that. You're trying to graft that onto a corporate setting. So there might be reluctance. You're dealing with a power dynamic, which in many ways actually works against the principles of coaching. Because if we're there to listen and ask powerful questions, to pick up breadcrumbs and just to feed off what we're hearing, so that the coachee can find those solutions, it's pretty far away from the traditional executive model of supervision that we have. So that there's almost a kind of paradigm shift, and we've built it into our human resources approach and separated growth from evaluation, so that those two spaces are actually identified and are separate, because they don't go that well together. That to me is a challenge.
Thank you. Thank you, Conrad. Indeed, it is. It is a apparent incompatibility and how to, leap the breach between the two. Thanks for that. Jalal, did you have the?
I would say, I agree that it needs time. And so the challenge to doing it effectively is to have the time to do it, and to do it with intent, the person and the conversation or the contract, as Conrad said, or George maybe. The individuals engaged need to be feeling that they are seen, they're heard, they're respected in that conversation. And that takes time. So you need to listen with intent during the coaching session. That takes time. It's important to have a limited number of people reporting to you, so that you can exercise it properly in a uniform way with the team.
That's interesting. Also, the limiting the number of people that report to you, so that you can engage in this kind of relationship. That's really interesting. Frode, you had sense that you had something to add.
Yeah, you saw my nonverbal. So I think I fully agree. I think time is a very important factor, but also the time that you allow yourself to have, and also the agreement with the organization about time. So the expectations, setting the expectations from the top of the organization, if you're in a corporate or an organizational setting, that you can do it with the necessary time, because coaching may bring you faster indeed to a adequate solution, I would say. But it takes time in the beginning. You take time for you to be trained first, or to train people on these techniques. And then it takes time to get to that solution that then finally will probably be better. So it's also about the perception from top management or from other colleagues about what is this? What is the added value of this? Why do we take so much time listening to people instead of just going for the solution? So it's about perhaps shifting also the expectations and the culture towards what then makes it acceptable or even favorable to have a coaching session at 2:00 in the afternoon when you were supposed to meet with somebody from the outside, for instance. That you have this kind of concrete perception and doing the things that you say, showing that it is indeed of added value, and then exemplifying it, showing good successes also that stem from this, so that you're able to share why we invest this time and why that then becomes valuable for the company, not only for the individual.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for pointing that out. And that also brings to mind how coaching can be, expressed in sessions or meetings, etc., but also very briefly in what we call corridor coaching, is just having that attitude of not immediately bringing a solution. You run into a colleague who has a query, and instead of giving them a tip, you say, well, what is your take on this? And so it really expands coaching to a whole set and panoply of leadership behaviors, as Frode explained here, and the challenges are not tiny. I'd like to ask the question to Katie, because Katie has successfully introduced the coaching culture in a private sector organization as the head of HR. And now in the International Road Transport Union, she's done it with the whole training for all the managers and all the staff and everything else that goes into it. And there's a webinar that she did last year for International Coaching Federation that I'll share with everyone, where she explains exactly how she did it step by step. But today, Katie, please answer the same question that we asked our panelists. What challenges did you find?
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much, Saba, for including me in a response on that, because I was getting quite excited. I could hear the panelists talking about the challenges that I was facing. There was the business context. There was we need results. There was what's the value for money? We don't have time. What is this coaching thing anyway? And I was like, oh gosh, okay, this is going to be interesting. So I kind of first of all, had a link with Conrad when he was talking about vision and how you project future state and what it would look like. And if you start embarking leaders and imagine what a future state would look like with the benefits of some of the coaching skills that are being used and the quality, and we come up with words like learning and achievement and caring and purpose, and link it to engagement, employee engagement, employee performance, getting results, then things start to taking shape. So that there's this convincing the leadership of the importance of coaching and its benefits. Then there's also making sure that everybody understands what coaching is. And so I designed, and I think that a few people on the panel have done the same thing, the foundations of coaching, just coaching 101. What are the skills? Asking open questions. What's that? How do you do it? Or how do you actually listen? And sometimes it's just like silence. And it was like, you're allowed to have silence at work. So there was another way of doing it. And then I think another very effective way is for people to actually experience one-on-one coaching with external coaches. And then the crème de la crème is when you have internal coaches who are also your champions for coaching, spreading the word. So you have to do leadership, the team, then you have to experience external coaching, and then try and increase the education through championing coaching and internal coaches. That would be my quick support ideas on that one.
Thank you. So there we have it from somebody who did it. And lots of insights from all of you, including Frode, who talked about the importance of showing the impact, the positive impact. That's so important. When I work with HR people who are building their coaching programs, I say measure everything, so that you can demonstrate there is an impact. Otherwise, it's just fluff. Yeah, coaching is great, but we can measure the outcomes. Are there any other comments there before we move on to our next question, dear panelists?
I think Frode is really spot on in that some environments are much more challenging than others. And it's great hearing from Katie as to how she's looked to make the environment in which she's worked in more supportive of coaching. It sounds like an object lesson in how to do it.
Yeah. So actually, maybe we could extend the questions to think about what would your advice be? And here we are allowed to give advice, or at least suggestions, let's say. What are your suggestions for leaders and managers, or anyone listening to our discussion today, on how to start adopting a coaching approach? What ideas spring to mind?
I mean, maybe I can start by our experience with Saba has been great to introduce this concept to me, I think back in 2015, maybe 10 years ago, Saba.
Yeah.
And so we tried the coaching skills for leaders and, tried it with a few colleagues, and then started learning the techniques or the benefits and how to do it. And then you can scale it through the organization as you find the benefit and you see the direct positive impact. So there needs to be some sort of introduction to it from a professional, and then you can scale it within the organization as you have more and more coaches.
And Bilal, can you remember what Saba said to you when you started the conversation about coaching, and what was it that got your attention?
It was at a time where there was a need to kind of provide feedback on performance, and there were some interpersonal skills that there was a real issue to be solved. And then we were like trying to explore techniques, and then Saba said, "Would you like to try this?" And I said, "Why not? Try it."
Excellent. So one of the ingredients for coaching approach is also the willingness to try, to be daring, to be curious. Thank you so much, Bilal. What about one of the other members of the panel?
Yeah, I can perhaps try. I would like to start with a question from Marianne, which is very funny in the quiz, in the chat. Sorry, she said, "Can we coach anybody, including the autocrats on the two sides of the Atlantic Ocean?" So and it's the same question as with leaders. Can anybody be a leader? And my standard answer is yes, if you can burn enough calories. So you want to burn 10 calories or 10 million calories. So, and I guess you can, to a certain extent, coach anybody, but what is the expected result? And do you really want to go there? So this is an unpopular statement, perhaps, but I guess there are some people that are very difficult to coach. And we have that in our psychometric tools also. We see some profiles are really difficult to coach. So it's a challenge, So if you're up for it, it's fine. But so there is something about the courage also, the coach's courage, the pioneer's courage in the case where you introduce it in a big organization that is not used to it, and so it comes from the inside or from the outside, depends on what you had as a starting situation. But you need that courage to go through this first step, and then you get knowledge about yourself, and people get knowledge about themselves and others, and then the courage is replaced by knowledge and a sort of a confidence, perhaps, and then the leaders and managers are then able to show up when it's tough and show what they think and feel also to others. It's allowed to feel something at workplace, and this is an element which is not so frequent in old business, let's say, leadership models. But indeed, it's very rich when it comes to getting people on board and getting them to do things. So I would say it's silly not to use that resource. And then you have also this thing about psychological safety. So the ability to admit that you are not able to find all the solutions as a manager. So therefore, you ask questions. It comes also naturally when you have a good training in coaching, is that you ask questions just of just giving answers and being not making people grow, because that's the anti-delegation, is that I find the solution for you. So the psychological safety, the empowerment, these things come also with coaching. So it's a business case also that can be done. You can create a business case from coaching. If you have people stating that they want to empower people, then you go into that door. If they say they want people to be more competent, you can go into that door with more on the skills step or the action-oriented coaching. But for sure, there are many ways of getting there. But the first step, I guess, is the courage. If you don't have the inside, you have to go outside to find it, so that you have a catalyst for starting on this path. But for sure, those first steps are critical, in my experience.
I love the way you talk about the beginning, which is the courage of let's say an individual person, and then this idea of building knowledge, getting the leadership or the management teams and perhaps even the employees to feel confidence, and then showing vulnerability, which is something that we're not all very comfortable with. And perhaps another thing that happens that can be useful, depending again on the context, is this idea of fun. Because if you say, silly me, and you have the courage to show your vulnerability at whatever level you might be in the organization, it can also be quite fun. And it doesn't always have to be a drama and a negative thing. It could be a positive thing too. And that creates empowerment.
Yeah, my first coaching session, I did some of the coaching certification inside my company. And my first session with a lady that I didn't know very well, they just chose me some of the managers and they said, well, come if you want, and we test. I said, what are you going to talk about? And she said, love. I was so feeling damaged, I'm not qualified for this. But it was weird fun afterwards to think about it, because it was not exactly love. It's more about relations. But, it's shocking, but you need to be courageous, but also you need to have this little auto-irony that say, well, it's not that a big deal. Let's try to do something anyway. And you follow the process, then it works. And fun, absolutely, Katie. I fully agree. It's fun when you get to know people better, you discover a lot of incredible things.
Yeah. Any other tips that come up, suggestions on adopting a coaching approach for our listeners?
Some research that I was involved in was with internal coaches, and the thing that many of them mentioned as attracting them to coaching, to learning to become a coach, was being coached themselves, and realizing how powerful it was. And I think on top of that, if people in the audience are thinking about looking to adopt a coaching approach for themselves or for people in their organization, some training, even just short inputs of training, which should involve a little bit of theory, but also quite a bit of practice, can be really helpful.
Yeah. So learning more about coaching by being coached yourself, or some basic trainings that people can get some theory, but also kind of get their hands dirty and live
practicing in a safe space.
Yeah, practicing in a safe space. Usually, one of the ones that works well, which you learn in coaching, isn't it, is this idea of feedback and observer role and triads, and no one feels too threatened. Everyone takes it in turns, and actually being the observer sometimes is where you learn the most. But it's interesting in any of the positions. Great points. I think that our listeners will find useful. Any other ideas?
Yeah, I'm maybe I can just take this from my own personal experience. As a head of school, I had a parent who came to see me and said, you need to do this Erickson coaching. It's mind-blowing. And there was a kind of fervor and energy in her that pushed me to try it out. And I think the first step is you need to go through a full coaching training yourself. You have to do the deep dive. You can't dabble in it. You have to go through the full training. And then what I did is I put my whole leadership team through the coaching course. It's a huge financial investment. It's a huge time investment. You have to have the guts to say, no, this is important. And everybody felt that it had done something really strong within them. From there, the whole team has been trained up as life coaches. And so we constantly remind ourselves of the principles of coaching, some of the techniques that we use when you're having an experience, and sharing how we can use principles of coaching in our leadership. At the beginning of every leadership meeting that I have, there's a lesson in leadership, and I rotate that around the team, so different members sharing with us. And often it comes back to our coaching course. And what I'm doing throughout the meeting is I'm constantly bringing back what we learned in that coaching course, because you forget it if you don't carry on practicing. And the members in my team who are, better coaches than I am now, because they've carried on to a higher level of qualification. It's really difficult to try and get coaching principles across if someone hasn't, or to expect someone to be able to bring those principles across if they haven't done the full training. As you know, it's part of a whole kind of network and ecosystem of understanding. So I think you have to take the deep dive and get your whole team in there to become stronger.
Conrad, that's very inspiring. And I hope that there are other the directors out there and CEOs who are listening who will organize leadership coaching for all their teams, so that everyone can be on the same page. And I hear that you also said that everyone got something out of it personally as well. And I also feel energy when you're talking about this experience that happened under your leadership. So that's a great, inspiring story. Thank you, Conrad.
Thank you. So we have very clear indications on what we can do to start this off, or to keep developing it in your organization if you have already got a basis of a coaching approach, internal coaches, trained leaders, maybe. So this is really, I really thank you all for all these incredible insights and practical tips. And I'd like to perhaps invite the audience to pop in your questions. And I'll screen them and then relay them to the panelists. So please go ahead and put your questions in there. I'll also cite a couple of very interesting comments from Marianne, who said, "Courageous, fierce conversations." That's very interesting, absolutely needed in these days. We also have Helmut, who is an experienced coach and a member of ICF, who explains to us how coaching is mostly done within four walls, and organized in an hour event. There's also coaching in nature called Vision Days. So there are many formats of coaching. So we'll start with one of the questions, which is, in your experience, what could be the best indicators to measure in order to show the impact of coaching? So I don't know if you've done that in your organization, or if you have any ideas about what should we measure to know that coaching has had an impact.
Smile.
Okay.
If you see the colleagues as you cross them in the hallway smiling, that's my human KPI for engagement and well-being in the office.
So we found in one small organization where we ran training for managers in coaching. This is not like the smile. It's not something you can quantify really, but those who'd been through the program, and it was a short program, it wasn't a deep dive program that Conrad is advocating as being a very good way, a blue chip way of going forward. But they said you could tell who'd been through the coaching program because they listened more. And the people who hadn't were jumping in and interrupting and saying stuff. But the folks who'd been through the coaching, because a big coaching skill is active listening. But you can't quantify it, I'm afraid. So, but Katie, you must have done this.
Yes, actually, I mean, there is a very simple KPI that's very mathematical, and it's called turnover. I mean, we do measure the retention, and I've been pretty impressed with the impact that it's had. I can't give you figures off the top of my head, but it's definitely improved. So retention is one of them. And then another one that's a bit like the smile that Bilal was talking about is that I have noticed more and more that people look out for each other more. So there's a lot more, "Oh, watch out, you're going to hurt yourself," or "Can I help you here? I can see that you're having a bit of a challenging time." So people seem to be more aware of the environment around them, around themselves, and there's a lot more help, a lot more willingness to help.
Can perhaps also chip in with a more qualitative indicator, which is the way we set goals. In fact, the goals become a bit more comprehensive, less only business and more also about behaviors, expected behaviors, or more precise about how we do things together, also more collective goals sometimes also. So when you have people training coaching, they will also start thinking we a bit more often. And also on the individual level, I mean, you can also measure it when you have, I remember a case with a new manager and a team that was devastated by the previous manager. And we chose the one that was most people oriented. We had a long discussion on this. There were other people that were more qualified, technically speaking. But this was after my coaching training. So I had arguments and we found out that we would take this person for the job and then give him a coaching to become a better manager because he was good with people, but not with managing. So we went the other way. And that was possible because there was proof that this would be the right thing for the team at that time. But it's also about the situation itself. It's more qualitative again. It's difficult to measure, but you have hard facts like turnover and absenteeism also that you can play a factor in the teams of those that have been coached compared to those that haven't been coached.
And the other thing that happened in a situation where coaching was a very unknown factor in an organization was people recommending other people to benefit the external coaching, saying, you should do this. It's a really great program. It really helps. So referrals, coaching referrals.
I think there are, two things that you can do. You can measure how the coach themselves feel, so self-assessment of how they feel empowered or more effective to lead, etc. And then you can measure the impact on the people that have been coached. So you would have like maybe a survey or interviews of people that have been coached and how that has changed work life for them. And lastly, a third aspect is the performance outcomes. Have projects been less derailed? Have there been less absentees? Has there been less conflict? So the monitoring is on different levels. But perhaps, Conrad, were you about to say something before we wrap up this question?
Do you agree that we're looking at qualitative metrics, I think, more than quantitative, and it's something that we face in the world of education. There's a desire to see quantitative data on learning outcomes, but the deep learning is not that easy to measure, and it's conversation by conversation, individual by individual, that you'll pick up these cues that there's been some sort of inner transformation. The smile on the face, the semantic field that they are using, some of the reflexes, the way they go into conversations. Over time, you can really see the behavior of the person changing in the way that they interact with others because of the coaching. Being able to report up on that is kind of difficult, but a leader can feed it. It has that impact on the social cues that really determine the culture of the organization and the way people interact with each other.
Thank you for that. And I'd like to add that Katie had one feedback that was really great when she did her coaching culture change, and one of the employees in her organization said it has changed our life. So that comes from the people who benefited from it. Maybe you don't remember, but actually there are a few more messages. I'll take one quick question, which is, how can we support coaching bottom up, the emergence of coaching bottom up? So we have 1 minute. Who would like to take that? Because sometimes it doesn't come from the top management. Often it does come from small pockets of people.
My take on it would be plan on getting buy-in from middle or top management as soon as you can, because we can do great things, in my experience, with people on the ground. But if the attitude, the culture, the management style does not at some point recognize that, it's going to be very hard work for them.
Thank you, George. Very pragmatic. Get the results and get the buy-in from the managers. So I'd like to wrap this up. Katie, do you want to do a little 1 minute sum up? I've seen you taking notes, sort of the general climate of this fantastic panel.
Well, just a little summary. I think we saw it starts with the individual, then it works with teams, and then with organizations. That's one way, at least, for the driving of coaching in an organization. But as George just said, middle and top management needs to support it for it to become a fully fledged program in an organization. So those are the two different things that need to be thought about in terms of making it work. So you do need to have your allies. You do need some champions, even if you believe it yourself. So that's, I would say, very important for the coaching approach in an organization. For the coaching approach as an individual, wow, the world's your oyster, and there are lots of things that can be read about even before doing any coaching, or just get a coach just to experience it once and see what happens.
Thank you. My last word would be to thank the panelists, to thank you, Katie. We're all involved in coaching, and I'd like to finish with a quote from Miles Downey, who was one of the people who introduced coaching in organizations in the UK. And he had a coaching school also, I don't remember the name. And he said very simply, coaching brings humanity back to the workplace. And I think all of you have illustrated this in your real life experience from your various organizations that you work in and universities. This is a treasure that you have shared for all our audiences. They will certainly be most encouraged to go this way and to face the difficult challenges they're having in these uncertain times, which is almost a euphemism, but let's call them uncertain to not say worse. So thank you very much, panelists. Thank you, Katie, and we'll close the call. Yes, there will be a recording. I see some questions. I will post the recording up very soon and send a message to everyone that attended, but it will be on our website, so you'll find it there. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Seba. Thank you, Katie. Thanks, Rodfish, panel members.